All right, joining us on the River Islands guest line, Brian Baldinger, presented by our proud partner, Golden State. Serving the Bay Area for 3 generations. Building better starts with Golden State. When you succeed, we succeed. Visit GoldenStateLover.com. And Baldy, we're talking to you this morning after another disappointing loss Sunday at Levi Stadium. The game, really, the stadium was flat at kickoff. It felt flat throughout the game. The Niners played flat offensively. They give up the touchdown to Geno Smith. He goes night-night at Levi Stadium, and they drop to 5-5. And there's a lot of ire towards Kyle Shanahan. A lot of people just blaming the head coach here. I believe players have to make plays, but obviously this has been a disappointing season thus far. And I keep thinking what you said a few weeks ago, Baldy, when Shasky asked you the question, what do you see when you see the Niners offense? And you said slow. Well, they're not getting any faster because they looked slow again on Sunday. Good morning to you, Baldy.
Well, they did. I mean, that's everybody. That's McCaffrey. That's, they had one explosive play on offense. They can't get the ball down the field. And, it's always been a hallmark of any coach team like Kyle is they're going to get explosive plays. And you can literally, there's a million stats out there. But you got to track explosive plays in this game. They changed the game, and they changed field position, and they give you the jolt of electricity you need. They couldn't get the ball down the field. I mean, they had one play last week by Jennings of 22 yards, and that was thrown before 20. He just got some yards after the catch. But they can't get any explosive plays in the run game or the pass game. They still look slow. And then when it really showed up was with Geno's touchdown run at the end. Like, where is everybody? Like, where's the speed? Like, I know they're in zone coverage, and ideally, zone coverage, Geno's like breaking a pocket. All right, let's get on the horse and go. And you just didn't see the speed to get to them. If you get them down to the ground, they might run out of time. Yeah. You don't know at that point.
Yep.
On that final drive, sticking with the defense there, what did you notice? Because I thought that the offensive coordinator for Seattle did a lot of little tiny creative things that I appreciated, but it felt like Geno, he gets sacked and then he runs for that first down, and Niners had their hands on their hips and they were gassed, and it felt like they didn't contain him, especially on that final play. What did you see from the Niner defense on the final drive?
Well, he also ran for 13 yards at a first down prior to that, right, Joe? And you watch the play, and nobody has the signal. The defensive line they're all looking at each other like, what's the call, right? And so Seattle's in hurry up. They're in a NASCAR mode. They're going up tempo, and really, when they rushed, nobody was coming off the ball. And then and especially in the last one, like there's no discipline to the rush. One defensive tackle is getting washed inside. There's a huge lane. Obviously, there's no Nick Bosa on the field. He got hurt earlier. And so, whenever he's not out there, it's always noticeable. But I saw undisciplined rushes, Joe, and I saw on a couple of those. And then, look, Jackson Smith and Jigba, he's just finding the holes in the zone on some of those throws. And there's no pressure on Geno. And so, it's a combination of no pressure, zone defense, receivers that understand how to find the openings. They took advantage of it.
I wonder, Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to be a star this league. He is coming along here. He's ascending. He's a baller. Seeing him in person, I'm like, wow, look at the route running by this young man. But do you think they should have maybe blitzed more? Because Greg Olsen was on the broadcast. He's saying, man, one blitz here. And Nick Bosa, he was on the field, Seattle averaged 3.3 yards a play. He left the game early third quarter, Baldy. Seattle started averaging 6 yards a play. So without your premier pass rusher, Leonard Floyd's obviously going to get the attention on the other side. Do you think Sorensen maybe should have dialed up more pressures? Now, I know that puts a lot of stress on your young secondary, but something's got to give here. You got to either get some pressure on Geno. He got way too comfortable in that second half.
It was too easy. It's easy for Greg. Look, I don't disagree with Greg at all. But even, when they did blitz, it was just Fred Warner just kind of fitting in as a fifth rusher. There wasn't anything overloads or free hitters. They don't really know how to do that. I'm not here to throw Nick Sorensen under the bus, but they don't, as opposed to, Steve Spagnuolo and some of these other teams in this league that are good blitzing teams, they just don't know how to get a free hitter to the quarterback. They just don't dial it up. They don't overload. They don't disguise. And so they're pretty bland in what they do.
Wow. I mean, that's
crazy. You could say lack of creativity on both sides of the ball, Sasky.
Well, I'm sitting in the game. I brought the little guy to the game, Baldy, and we're sitting there, and I'm going like, oh, they're just going to throw a little out route to DK here. They got the matchup that they want, and they attacked that when they needed to. They hit pick plays when they needed to. I thought Kenneth Walker ran really hard. What does this defense look like, though, without Nick Bosa? Because the oblique injury, have you ever had an oblique injury, I guess, number one? And number two, like, how long do you think he's out, and what does it look like without him?
Well, it depends on where it's at. I mean, if it's a lower abdomen injury, he's going to be in Philadelphia getting surgery from Dr. Bill Myers because it's not going to heal. So I've had it twice. He does all of the – if it is lower abdomen, I don't know where in the oblique it is. If it's just normal, it's still going to take a couple of weeks. You can see, like, he played one more play with it, and I saw him hopping. Like it looked like it was a leg injury to me more than an oblique injury because you see him pull up on his last pass rush. He got the sack. He got up. He wasn't right. He was favoring his leg. Next play, he tried to come off the ball, and next thing you know, he's hopping off the field. So I don't know exactly what the injury is, but to answer your question, Joe, they don't look like there's a single threat out there to get to the quarterback from any position, including Leonard Floyd. They don't look like they have anybody that can beat one-on-one pass protection right now.
That's not pretty. That's not pretty with Green Bay and Buffalo on deck. We're talking to Brian Baldinger as we do every single Tuesday at 7:30 here on the Morning Roast. All right, let's get to the offense here. Boy, offensively, you talked about the lack of explosives. Let me ask you this. You would know more than me. We were just having a discussion about getting separation at the line of scrimmage. So Niners are one of the worst teams when it comes to their wide receivers getting separation on routes. They're one of the worst teams when it comes to yards after catch, which is amazing because they were number one last season, and they dubbed themselves the Yak Boys. How much of that is on the play calling and creativity of Kyle Shanahan, and how much of that is on the players? Because I always feel like players got to execute, but maybe it's something on Shanahan. You tell me, Baldy.
Well, I mean, there's an old belief in this business, Bonte, that if you can't beat man coverage, you got to get new wide receivers. And, Jawan Jennings wins because of his size, not because of his separation. So, and he's very good at slow post basketball when the ball's in the air. So he had a good day. But look, that's what I would do to Debo. So if your guys are struggling to separate, then you've got to find different ways to get guys open. Whether it's bunch formations, whether it's man beaters, crossers, stack routes. I mean, you got to go in a different direction to get guys open. And so I would say that's, part receivers and part Kyle right there. But honestly, Bonte, it's kind of hard to believe that they could play that poorly because George Kittle isn't in the lineup.
Yeah.
Everybody has to replace a great player. But their ability to run block without George Kittle is horrible. They played Jalen Moore as the second tight end, Saubert, Moore, they were terrible on Sunday. They had, I showed yesterday, I showed 8 McCaffrey runs where he went for 2 yards or less. And honestly, they were horribly blocked plays. They've been running the same 5 plays from different formations and different motions since Kyle's been there, and they couldn't execute at the point of attack.
Is that all offensive line? You referenced some of the tight ends there. Is Juice having a good year? I mean, Baldy, you study these things.
Yeah, well, he wasn't asked to do a whole lot on Sunday, to be honest with you. When he's in combination with Kittle, they're about as good as it gets, and how they set guys up and how they double to the next layer. But Jalen Moore didn't know what he was doing out there in some of those runs, and Saubert wasn't very good. And just you're working in concert with one another, and it looked bad. Leonard Williams is a good player. If you try to position block a Leonard Williams, he's going to go right through you, and that's what he did to Aaron Banks. He didn't play particularly well, and so I thought the run game was terrible. I also think this is going to be criminal, but honestly, Jordan Mason looks like he's hitting the hole harder and faster in a couple of the runs that he had than Christian. And I don't think there's anything wrong with Christian, but your eyes can be wrong. Your eyes can still need time because you haven't seen anything since the Super Bowl, and now you're going out there for 40 carries or almost 40 carries last 2 weeks, and I don't know if his eyes are perfect right now, the way that we're used to seeing them.
Well, Baldy, we talk about slow and speed and having some explosiveness on offense, and we were discussing this earlier today. I'm glad you led me to it. Christian McCaffrey's not getting to the second level. And at the game, we're both, Shask and I at the game. I got my daughter there. She knows what time it is. Like, boy, this guy's not getting through the hole. It's not getting to the second level. She's not even 4 yet. Jordan Mason's had a hell of a year. Isaac Guerrero has juice, which you've been on since day one at training camp. And we know he hurt the hamstring on day one at training camp, but he's been back, and he just popped a 76-yard run against Seattle on Thursday Night Football. Why is there so much reluctancy to not just give guys, hey, give McCaffrey 10 touches. Here's Mason with 5-7 touches. Here's Guerrero, get him out there in space. I just don't get it because, as you just pointed out, we can all see it. McCaffrey's not right now.
He doesn't look special. He just doesn't. And so Mason, he hit that first run of his 8 yards up the middle.
Yeah.
Like he hit that whole like we've been watching him hit it all year.
Right.
You know, where he was second in the league in rushing a couple weeks ago.
2 carries, Baldy. 2 carries.
2 carries. He had 8 and 5 yards. So like he hit the hole the way he's supposed to hit the hole. And so I think who knows what's being said. Obviously, they're not sustaining offense where you could get the number of carries that you want. Although they had 27 carries, you know, some of them obviously are scrambles by Brock. But I don't know, like the way Jordan hit that first run, I'm like, that's what they need. They just need somebody just to be a bullet right through those between the line. And then he always, he's taking the pile with him. So I don't know. Like I think Kyle probably thinks that when we get to the postseason, if we get to the postseason, we're going to need McCaffrey at his best. Let's play him into shape. And I think that might be part of it. But that was not an impressive run game by the 49ers on Sunday.
All right. We're going to get into the quarterback in just a second. But, like, Devin Witherspoon, I don't know. This guy is a freaking star, I think. I mean, maybe I'm overstating it, Baldy, but like physicality, the ability to flip the hips, understanding where guys are going, where the routes are going, and where the quarterback wants to throw. I was so impressed with him. I know he's a different position than Kyle Hamilton, but the way that coach used Kyle Hamilton, I'm saying, oh my God, we're going to have to face this guy for the next half decade to a decade. I think he's a rising superstar. Am I putting too much on it, Baldy?
No. I mean, he's arrived. I mean, coming out of Illinois, he was clearly the best corner in the draft. Nobody hit like that. Now he's playing a little bit more under control when it comes to hitting. I don't think he's going to survive the way he was hitting. Maybe he could be Buda Baker and survive. But, because, I mean, he just hit but his ability to break on the ball, he defended 3 or 4 passes the other day in tight coverage. But his ability to blitz, he came off the edge, he batted down a ball, Brock Purdy the other day in coverage. His tackling, it's crisp. He just plays the game at an electric speed. And so you almost have to keep your eyes on him all game just to see what he's going to do.
Baldy, going back to the quarterback, Brock Purdy, I don't know if this is on him or Shanahan or what, but even in the pass game, and I get it, they're not getting much separation, but everything is over the middle of the field, man. There's still adjustments. I don't get it. We were watching Seattle with DK, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and all these teams use every blade of grass. Yet the Niners, they're like allergic to out routes. They're allergic to throwing it in the flat. Baldy, is this just a scheme, or is Purdy able to do that consistently, throwing outside the numbers?
Well, I mean, they do like to attack the middle of the field. Most teams funnel everything to the middle, and so that's where that's kind of where they want you to go. And so it makes it tough. It makes it tough to make a living in the middle of the field all game long, especially if you're 6 feet tall or 6'1". You're not going to have the type of vision that some of these other guys, Joe Burrow, whatever, has. But, he still has great touch on it. He made a number of good throws, but they're not using every blade of grass, and they're not hitting some of those option routes the way they once did. And so they look, it just looks pretty – because they look slow and because they don't get explosive plays, and I'm not saying this is the word I want to use, but they look predictable. Mm-hmm. Very predictable in what they want to do right now.
All right. I feel like we've gotten, this far. The clock management. I thought that the Seattle coach called the timeout to get the ball back with over, on the other side of 2 minutes to be able to give his team enough time to march down the field, knowing he had one extra timeout in his back pocket. Shanahan burned the first challenge on the Jackson Smith and Jigba one near the sideline. I didn't like that challenge. It wasn't a third down call. He was short of the sticks no matter what, whether it call stands or not. And then he used another one a little later on DK near the sideline on like the second play of the final drive. Just what did you think of clock management, using your challenges? Like, these things all kind of bite you in the butt when you look up on the scoreboard and there's only 13 seconds left as Gino's walking in.
It's not enough time to go down the field. I mean, but at the same time, you're thinking your defense is going to stop them at the same time, or at least hold them to a field goal, and maybe play for overtime or like that. I don't know if you can kind of look backwards at that like that. You just hope your defense can get them off the field or just force a field goal right there at the very least. And so, maybe it's just trust his defense. They thought they could finish the job, which they couldn't do.
All right, so let's go to the I guess second to last 49er possession. They're up in the game, 17-13, and there's 2:58 on the clock. It's 4th and 6 from about the 43-yard line. Do you go for it? Do you kick the field goal? You got Moody back, even though, it's probably a 60-yard field goal, give or take. Did you like the punt, giving the ball back to Seattle? They kicked it into the end zone, and so I don't know. I just, punt. You're in no man's land. What did you think, especially given how that game was playing out?
Well, I mean, look, if you don't make it, Joe, you're getting the ball at the 42-yard line. So that's the downside of it. If you punt, you make them go a long field, as long as you can. You like to keep the ball, within the 20 for sure, and pin them deeper, make them go a longer ways. I'm not a big fan of the 60-yard field goals, and unless you're Brandon Aubrey last night, in Dallas, like I don't, especially after the debacle that it was in Tampa, that's got to kind of weigh on your mind a little bit from the week before. So I think those are some of the situations that you're thinking about in that situation. 4th and 6, I don't know. Like, that's not I don't care what analytics say. I think I probably would have punted right there.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Punt, I had no issue with that. But what about 2nd and 11? A lot of people had a problem with Kyle Shanahan dialing up a pass. You get McCaffrey stuff for a negative gain. He loses a yard. It's 2nd and 11, 3:02 left. And I thought the play design was really good. I thought actually one of Devo's better routes, I think. But he's wide open there. Purdy throws high. It's incomplete. Did you have an issue with that play call at all? And if so, or if you didn't have an issue with the play call, Baldy, what happened on that play? Was Purdy just too quick? Was the defensive line in his face? Hands up? What went on that 2nd and 11? Because I like the play to call.
I thought about the same thing, Bonte. I thought the same thing. Like, man, just keep running the clock. Maybe a different type of run. I don't know if it's a toss behind Trent, whatever it is. They obviously weren't very good at it all game long. Maybe that affected Kyle in the call. I didn't have a problem. Obviously the execution hurts. You stop the clock on the incompletion. So that's an issue. But I kind of thought, man, 2nd 11, the clock just clicked. The clock might be the enemy. But as it turned out, I don't know if Seattle would have had any problem scoring the way that they did, even if they had less time right now.
I mean, where do they go from here, right? The season's not over, okay? There's still a lot to fight for, and they may not look good currently, which I agree with, but the season's not over. So where do you go from here? They got to face Green Bay this weekend, and they're a beatable team to me, but I don't know what the Niners do well that they can hang their hat on all week to really fire up the fan base right now. We're down in the dumps, Baldy.
Some Sundays, Joe, you look like a 17-point offense, and that's just not good enough in this league. Whatever. I mean, it's 3 times now so far this season where they scored 18 or fewer points. And you go, that probably, if that continues on stretches like this, that's not going to get you to the postseason. And even if you do get to the postseason, you're not going to win any games. Like, they've got to find ways to get more explosion in their offense. Now, this new defensive coordinator in Green Bay, I mean, they're doing a good job. They press the receivers. They rob the middle of the field with Xavier McKinney. They play 3 safeties. They're all really good. Evan Williams, Xavier McKinney. They have. This is going to be interesting because you're talking about attacking the middle of the field. Well, that's what they want to take away, and they're going to force your receivers to tight man coverage, and they're going to rush a 4-man rush. So you're going to have Rashawn Gary out there, some decent pass rushers. But this is a game where the receivers have got to win. You know, whether it's Pearsall or I don't know if Kittle's back or whatever. I'm going to be up there announcing the game. I'm really looking forward to it. But, you know, at some point, you got to beat good teams.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you're going to go to the postseason, you're 5-5. Everybody's sort of bunched up there in that division. Arizona's beating good teams. At some point, you got to beat good teams. And might as well start up in Green Bay, who's got 19 takeaways. They got Jordan Love played fantastic last week. You got a really good runner, Josh Jacobs. So there's a lot of things to contend with. And an offense that's very creative. They do a lot of different things. Totally different than what Kyle does. But it's going to be a good matchup between these two teams. But if you score 17 points in Green Bay, you're not beating that team.
Yeah, just ask Chicago, right? They scored 19 and get their field goal blocked at the end of the game, and Green Bay still is one in the Windy City. So you already answered my next question. Lambeau Field. Lambeau, what is Baldy doing Lambeau Field? We wanted to make this road trip. We unfortunately can't make it. It's up to Green Bay. I wanted to go. I know the elements are going to be a factor here. I hear that rain is going to be in the forecast. We'll see about that. But I love this type of football. Give us the laydown, the breakdown of Lambeau Field. Baldy at Lambeau.
I mean, it's really football heaven. I caught one pass in my life. It was at Lambeau Field, 37 yards. I might, recreate that moment coming out of the end zone and getting us out of trouble when I was with the Colts. I've known a lot of Packers over the years. One of my best friends is Sterling Sharp. You look up there, Sterling Sharp in the Ring of Honor. It's honestly like you go into Lambeau Field, Don Hudson, Bart Starr, Favre, Aaron, the coaches, Lombardi Avenue. You look up and it's like the history of the NFL is right in front of you. On all of their Curly Lambeau, whatever it might be, it's the history of the NFL when you walk into that stadium. The fans are as good a fan base as there is. I mean, you go out there and tailgate with them. They welcome all of the people that were coming from San Francisco, 49er fans, Pack fans. They played legendary games in Green Bay and San Francisco over the years. You're sort of reminded by all those great games and all those big moments. And so all that, you kind of take it all in and you just sort of inhale it. And you just go, this is why we're so obsessed by this game of ours. When you go to Lambeau, it comes to life.
So sports pilgrimages, if you were saying, like, it used to be old Yankee Stadium, but it's gone. And the old Boston Garden, it's gone. You still have Dodger Stadium, but I don't know if Dodger Stadium hits like Lambeau, because when you say Lambeau, it hits. Yeah. What other ones that you can think of off the top of your head would you throw in there that are sports pilgrimages that a diehard has to make?
Well, I mean, obviously you go Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
So the Garden, obviously there was just a big UFC fight there this weekend. Yep. But, I mean, if it starts with the Garden, I mean, you go out to the L.A. Coliseum, to see USC play, or, you can see, I can still see, the Olympics in '84 there. And some of those races and some of those events in there, some of those legendary Raider games that were played in that stadium. The Rose Bowl is a legendary place. You almost have to start going to some of these college venues, Joe.
Yeah.
To start like really taking it in. You go to the Big House in Michigan.
Denny Bryant.
I remember going to Ohio State and playing when I was a senior, like in the visiting locker room where we're like it smells like roses. Because the goal every year for Ohio State was to get to the Rose Bowl. Like they have the rose scent inside. You're like, you stinkers. Like you think of all these little subtle things. You can go through the list. You go to Tuscaloosa, Bryant-Denny Stadium. Like there's, some of these places are just phenomenal.
I mean, the old Orange Bowl before they tore it down. But how about Touchdown Jesus in South Bend, Indiana?
Yeah.
Going to Notre Dame. Have you been to Notre Dame, Baldy? You been down there at Notre Dame?
Oh, yeah, Touchdown Jesus, yeah. My dad, we drove across we moved from New Jersey to Minnesota one year, and on January 1st, we timed it. We drove across the country to Minnesota. On January 1st, we touched down at South Bend, Indiana. My dad made us go see the stadium. Notre Dame played Texas for the national championship that day. I think it was the Cotton Bowl. And we just happened to, my dad take us to the stadium that day and let us kind of walk around.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome
was
stuff.
Was that Montana's team?
That might have been Montana's team, right?
No. That was 79.
Okay.
78, that was against Houston, but this was 1969.
Oh, so way back when. Oh, way back
Baldy,
when.
you talk about your lone catch here. Here it is right here, Lambeau.
This tackle-eligible play was a neat trick that transformed lineman Brian Baldinger, number 62, into a pass catcher.
The run was great. Did somebody like clip your legs out? They took your legs right from under you, man.
They blew me up, man. Because the longer you get away from it, the bigger the lie gets. Yeah. I just tell people that the fastest packer caught me from behind and then blew me up.
You should have said you were doing the Dion and then, celebrating prematurely.
I wasn't really trying to do the Dion. I was just trying to protect myself. But back then, we had such great. We used to run when we got a lead. We would run the wishbone with Eric Dickerson and Albert Bentley, and we had a wishbone quarterback that came in. And I said they would ask me when we went to the wishbone. Look, will you go from guard to play the tight end? Tight end spot's more important than the guard protecting the edge on this wishbone. I said I'll go play the tight end for you. Only if you put a pass in for me. Like, I want to catch a pass. So Ron Meyer was our head coach, and he put the pass in. He called it up, and my one moment of fame, it came true at Lambeau.
That was awesome. Baldy, you're the best, man. Have fun at Lambeau this weekend.
Yeah, see you guys. You bet.
Brian Baldinger here on the River Islands guest line. A lot of fun with